Hey everybody, I hope you're doing well this weekend. I know I'm not in my usual setting, I'm in my car, so there's no snakes around me, but I had been wanting to make a short video on this subject because I've seen a few people talk about it before, and we actually had someone comment on one of our videos this before, and it's kind of like a controversial thing a little bit, but at the same time, you know, for most people it's not really that big of a deal because, you know, everybody has their own way of like doing things. There's, you know, the whole debate over glass enclosures or vivariums, terrarium versus breeding racks, and there's people that literally think that keeping snakes in racks or tubs in general is insanely cruel and it's abusive and it's terrible, and they say that you don't really care about the animal when you do that. And we have quite a few different snakes in our house. We don't just have one species of snake that we keep, and that's part of kind of our thing. You know, we want to have, when we get into breeding, we want to have a variety of snakes for people to choose. When we start going to shows and, you know, start being on Morph Market and things like that, pretty much got 2 rooms in our house that are designated to snake stuff. Well, the living room, if you've ever seen our setup in there, we've got our 2 racks, 2 metal racks on either side of our television, and then we also have another, like a side table sort of thing, cabinet with another tank there. So there's 7 tanks downstairs. Tanks downstairs are boa constrictors, there's super dwarf and a dwarf reticulated python, and we have a Kenyan sand boa. And then upstairs is where our ball pythons are. We have 8 of them. We also have Pumpkin up there, our bearded dragon, which you've seen her a few times already. But we have the ball pythons up there because it's a little bit quieter upstairs, and we had some issues with our first snake we ever got, Lucian, our blue-eyed leucistic ball python. We had some issues with him going on hunger strikes when he was downstairs in the living room. Part of it was his enclosure, which I'll get to in a minute, because that's a real big reason why I wanted to make this video, to prove my point. We moved him and we ended up deciding, okay, upstairs is where we're going to keep our ball pythons. That's where we're going to do the ball python stuff. And so anyway, so upstairs is where we have our racks and our tub systems. And Pumpkin, obviously, she's a bearded dragon. She's still a baby. She's a few months old. She's in her 40-gallon vivarium, which we're going to keep her in a vivarium. We're going to upgrade her when she gets bigger. She won't ever go in a tub because you don't keep bearded dragons in tubs like that. Snakes are a little bit different. You can choose whether or not you want to go the vivarium route or want to be a little bit more simplistic and do like single tubs with a heat mat and thermostat hooked up to it, or if you want to do a rack system. Our primary reason for using rack systems is because we want to breed, and that's why we have 15 snakes. And we have a lot of pairs of snakes that are going to go together when it comes to like their genetics and things like that. So that's the primary reason that we are, you know, using rack systems. But even if you don't want to breed, you know, rack systems, they allow you to keep multiple snakes in a very convenient, streamlined way. If you have a vivarium, a glass vivarium, and you've ever had to clean it out and you have multiple vivariums, you will understand how much easier a rack would be to deal with, because it's literally these plastic sterilite tubs that you pull out. They take literally less than 5 minutes to clean. If you ever have to deep clean them, most of the time it's spot cleaning each day and changing water and things like that when you need to. But, you know, it's so much easier than vivariums, and especially if none of your vivariums are bioactive. If you don't know what bioactive means, that's where you'll set up a very naturalistic vivarium with live plants and like real soil and different things like that, and you'll have isopods and springtails, and you have these microorganisms or these small like insects that thrive and they clean everything up for you. So you rarely, I think you never have to clean these out, or you very rarely have to, like unless it gets like really bad. But if you don't have bioactive vivariums, which we don't, we never had any, it can be a chore when you've got to clean out a bunch of enclosures like that, a bunch of glass enclosures. But that's another reason why, you know, if you're going to keep multiple snakes, whether you want to breed or not, like I said, it's very, very easy and convenient to have a rack system. Now, when it comes to ball pythons especially, I personally believe that ball pythons do the best out of any other snake in tubs and in rack systems, because ball pythons, the way they live out in the wild out in Africa, they live in, or they're found a lot in burrows and termite mounds, things like that. They're on the ground. You know, they like to feel very secure, and they like really tight spaces. They like to feel very secure and safe. If you have an enclosure that's too large, too spacious, doesn't have enough hides, things like that, it can really cause them issues and stress them out, which can lead to them not wanting to eat for you. And that's what we had to deal with Lucian. Had several issues going on because, you know, first we thought, okay, it's because he's downstairs in the living room. There's more going on down there. The temperatures aren't as steady down there. It gets a little bit colder down there than upstairs. The first thing we did was we completely cleaned everything out. You know, we made sure that it was completely freshly cleaned out, because some people say that ball pythons, if, you know, the tank's not clean and they can smell themselves, or they can smell just other smells and it's not like a fresh clean tank, they can just stop eating. So we did that, and then we blacked out the sides of the tank. The back was already covered, it had a background, so we blacked out the sides. Hopefully he didn't have to feel as exposed, and he was where he needed to be with his temperatures, and nothing really worked. So we moved him upstairs, and we got him to start eating when we moved him upstairs, but then he stopped again. He went on a second hunger strike, and so then that's when we decided, let's move him to the rack. Let's see what he does in a tub, because he came from Will Banks, Captive Bred Reptiles Online. I'm sure you know who that is. Amazing guy, Mike Wilbanks. So that's where we got our very first snake. And you know, we knew that Lucian started out life in a tub as a hatchling, you know what I mean? Like, we knew that that's what he was used to. He was eating live rat pups when, you know, before we got him. And so we just said, you know what, let's go back to what he knows. Let's go back to a rack system for him. And we put him in there, and he started eating. And the only time he hasn't eaten, there was like 1 or 2 weeks where he didn't eat in the rack system after we moved him. And that was just because he went into shed. He's one of those snakes that won't eat when he goes into shed. There are some snakes that will still eat, but he does not. There's like a lot of things have to be on par for him to be in the mood to eat. Like, he's sort of like, I call him my conditional snake. After moving him in there, we noticed a lot of improvement, and we've noticed a lot of, you know, good things with all of our snakes that are in rack systems. And you know, we have both. We have the tanks downstairs, which the snakes downstairs are in those vivariums, and then we have the rack systems upstairs. And so we do a little bit of both, and we don't really think that either is bad. We do both of them, obviously, but you know, to try and say that tubs or rack systems are abusive, like, I just feel like you don't really know anything about snakes if that's your consensus, if that's your, you know, outright opinion, because ball pythons do very well in rack systems. They thrive in rack systems, and there's other snakes that thrive in rack systems as well. And you know, if you're keeping snakes as pets and you're not really into the breeding thing, but say you have multiple snakes and you keep them in a rack system, all you got to do is take them out. You're supposed to take them out every week anyway and handle them and socialize them and things like that. So all you have to do is take them out, give them some enrichment. If you feel like it's so cruel for them to be in that tub all day, you know, just take them out, give them some exercise. It's not that big of a deal. You can still put plants in there, you can still put different hides in there. Just because you see all these breeders, you know, putting just a water dish and some substrate in there, it doesn't mean that you can't deck your tubs out and your racks and put some cool plants in there. I mean, you don't have to skimp on decor and those things. It's just that people aren't going to be able to see it. So you're not going to be able to see any of those plants or anything unless you pull the tubs out yourself and look and show people. But you can still put things in there and mimic the setup of a tank or a vivarium. So I just feel like it's a little bit, like, I feel like people need to educate themselves on how a lot of these snakes live in the wild before they want to make a comment, because it's a little bit annoying when you have people thinking that you don't care about your animals when you clearly do care about your animals, and your husbandry is on point, because obviously our snakes shed fine, our temperatures are fine, our snakes are eating fine. We don't own a snake that looks unhealthy at all, you know what I mean? And so that kind of goes to show that we're doing something right when it comes to our animals. And we do take our animals out for enrichment, especially the ones that live in the rack systems and they're on the bigger side. We do frequently take them out and let them get exercise in the room and take them outside when it's nice, things like that. So that's my take on it. I don't see anything wrong with it. Obviously, if you were to be the type of person like you never change their water, their substrate's gross and dirty, and you never clean, like you never spot clean and like eventually clean it out and replace with new substrate at certain points in time, if you just have this neglectful attitude towards your animals, like even if they live in a tank, I've seen people keep snakes in tanks and it looks like a terrible setup, and you can tell that animal is being neglected. So just because, you know, snakes might live in a rack system, that doesn't mean that they're automatically neglected or not cared for, because like I said, I've seen keepers with tanks that are very poorly maintained, not the right size, don't have the right heating elements, don't have any hides or anything. The animal's completely exposed in that tank, has nowhere to hide, nowhere to feel secure. And like I said before, if you know anything about snakes, you know that they like to feel secure, and they're gonna thrive that way if they feel safe, where there's somewhere they can hide to get away from people. So yeah, I mean, whether you keep snakes in a rack system or freestanding tubs, like I said earlier with some of ours, how they are, or vivariums, you can be a neglectful person either way. I just think that people need to understand that, and I like having both. You know, there's a part of me that does enjoy having both, because downstairs where our living room setup is, we like when people come over and enjoy seeing the snakes, and obviously in the vivarium is where you're going to be able to see the snakes. So we do enjoy that aspect of it. But upstairs where we've got our breeding stuff set up, you know, that's mostly rack systems, and there's a reason for that. You know, there's a reason why all of us as keepers do things the way that we do them. So I think that people just need to stop being so judgmental unless they've been through the experience of owning snakes and had success with it, and have done their research and know what snakes actually like. I think people need to be a little bit more open-minded and quit trying to point fingers. So I just wanted to talk about that a little bit. Like I said, you know, if you got your own opinion, leave it in the comments, but please don't be disrespectful, because we don't want none of that. We just, you know, we're fine with discussion about the topic, and we want to bring more people together and be more open about things, so that we can, as a reptile community, you know, be a little bit more nicer to each other and be a little bit more supportive to each other. Because if you're not aware, we already have plenty of things going against us. If you think about all the different reptile laws and things throughout different states, and how sometimes as keepers it can be hard for us to be able to do what we do and enjoy what we do without, you know, the law trying to change things and make things even more difficult for us to continue to do what we do. So that's just something I wanted to talk about, but I really hope you guys are having a great weekend. We'll see you next week for the next video. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe and follow us on our Instagram. Like I said before, that's where we post a lot of stuff, more frequently than YouTube and Facebook. It's at magic_city_Morris. See you next time.